Folks are filing in. I want to welcome you all to today's webinar, which is Grow and Expand Your Business with the United States Coast Guard. We have a couple of great speakers with us. We have Micheline Rangel of the Small Business and Industry Engagement Liaison, Management and Program Analyst with the Small Business and Industry Liaison Programs for the United States Coast Guard. And we also have speaker Nettie Straub, who is also Small Business and Subcontracting Program and Acquisition Innovation Advocate. So again, as we continue to file in, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. If you would, please put in the chat box your information as for us to do some networking amongst yourselves. In the Q&A box, if you have any questions, please place those within the Q&A box. And once we get to the end, we will actually go back and answer some of those Q&A questions. And also, any of you that submitted questions prior to the webinar, we will also be providing as far as answers back to you on those specific questions. So from here, I want us to go ahead and get started here. And I would like for Michelle to go ahead and introduce herself and tell us a little bit about herself. Michelle?
Good morning, everyone. Hi, how are you doing? My name is Micheline Rangel. I have been with the Coast Guard as working in this office for about 5 years now, and I absolutely enjoy meeting with vendors and just getting to hear all of your capability statements. It's actually my favorite part of my job. Before that, I guess you could read what it is, but I'll just read a little bit of it. I enjoy focusing on improving relationships. I also am my husband's retired coastie, so I absolutely love the Coast Guard and just take good pride in just being part of the Coast Guard family. I am right now at the Sea, Air, and Space Convention, so as you can see from the background, so that loved that I'm able to take some time out and just be with you guys today.
Okay, and go over to Nettie. Nettie, if you would please introduce yourself.
Great. Thank you so much. My name is Nettie Straub. I've been with the Coast Guard in the Office of Small Business, Industry Engagement, and Outreach for a little over 2 years. Prior to that, I was across the board with the Department of Defense, supporting a multitude of procurements, various branches within the DoD and across the board. So I really love small business. And as my colleague Micheline said, this is the best part for us, like helping you learn how to do business with us, because it can be very complicated. So we're very much looking forward to sharing with you today what we can about the U.S. Coast Guard and how you can learn a little bit and come do business with us. So we're very excited and looking forward to today's event. Thank you.
Okay, I got to remember to unmute myself. Okay, that's Marine Corps mistake. Okay. Okay, so again, we want to say thank you all for joining us, and we're going to get into the deck itself and talk about. Okay, hoorah! That's what I'm talking about. I got some Marines on the line here. Thank you. We're going to get into the deck as far as doing business with the Coast Guard, and let me find this little trigger here. You know what? I pulled up the wrong deck there. I'll get this again. Oh, you know what, Ed? What did you do? All right. here we are. So, Nettie, Micheline, which one of you wish to start out, and just let me know when you want to go to the next slide.
Great. So that'll be me, Mr. James. We'll go ahead and get started. And to conserve bandwidth, I'm going to go ahead and stop my video. That way everyone can hear me clearly. So again, good afternoon. My name is Nettie Straub. We really want to wish and extend a special thank you to the Small Business Advocacy Group in the GovCon webinar series for this opportunity to share information on how you can do business with the U.S. Coast Guard. So as I said, please ask questions. We will not address procurement specific questions, but we will be able to provide as much information as possible about how you can do business with the Coast Guard and provide resources and some background information. If we do miss answering any of your questions, we do have additional resources to include our open for business at uscg.mil email address. So that'll be provided to you at the end of this series. Next slide. So today's presentation will provide insight of the U.S. Coast Guard mission, the types and products and services we buy, and how we buy them. We'll include an overview of our 6 procurement centers and recommendations on how you can prepare to do business with the U.S. Coast Guard. Additionally, we will feature some Coast Guard unique innovations, as well as resources and outreach activities. Throughout the presentation, QR codes have been embedded that will allow you to rapidly connect with some more in-depth information and resources specific to that topic on that slide. We encourage you to explore these various sites to learn more about the Coast Guard, and we have provided all of these in a handout that you will receive after the event. Next slide. So as you can see, we're a very small team. As my colleague Micheline, who will be speaking in a little bit, just related, this week is the Sea, Air, and Space event that our director, Maria Kersey Robinson, she is helping support there on site at the Inner Harbor, as well as Micheline and myself, and another one of our industry liaisons is Miss Stephanie France. So we're a very small but mighty team, and we really try to do as much outreach as possible. So virtual events such as this really help us connect with a lot of people all at once. Next slide. So what is it that the Coast Guard does? So the Coast Guard is one of 6 U.S. Armed Forces, and the mission of the Coast Guard is to ensure our nation's maritime safety, security, and stewardship. So the changing environmental conditions continue to affect how and where the Coast Guard conducts its missions, as each year the Coast Guard has to respond to a growing number of severe weather events, such as hurricanes and catastrophic flooding. Additionally, the Coast Guard is increasingly called upon to prevent and respond to emerging cyber threats that could disrupt our ports and waterways. So industry partnerships are vital to the Coast Guard strategic plan and priorities that you can see if you connect to this QR code on the bottom right. Next slide. So what are the operational mission programs? So we always like to go over what the operational mission programs are so that you can have a better understanding of what the Coast Guard is tasked to do. The Coast Guard manages 6 major operational mission programs. These operational mission programs oversee 11 unique missions, which were codified in the Homeland Security Act of 2002. That act delineates the 11 missions as either Homeland Security or non-Homeland Security missions. And I'll just briefly go over what those 6 primary operational mission programs are that encompass all of those 11 missions. The first is the Maritime Law Enforcement Mission Program, which protects America's maritime borders, defends the nation's maritime sovereignty, facilitates legitimate use of the waterways, and suppresses violations of U.S. federal law on under, and over the seas, to include illegal migration and transnational organized crime. The second is our Maritime Response Mission Program. This program seeks to mitigate the consequences of marine casualties and disastrous events. The Coast Guard is the nation's premier maritime first responder, minimizing loss of life and property by searching for and rescuing persons in distress. The Maritime Prevention Mission Program is the third mission program, and that seeks to prevent marine casualties. So we have the protection, the mitigation, and now the prevention of marine casualties and property losses, which includes minimizing security risks and protecting the marine environment. The Coast Guard does this by developing and enforcing federal regulations, conducting safety and security inspections, and analyzing port security risks. The fourth is the Marine Transportation System Management Mission Program, which seeks to ensure a safe, secure, and environmentally sound waterways system. So Coast Guard works in concert with other federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial agencies, as well as the marine industry, maritime associations, and the international community to safeguard the efficient and economical movement of more than 5.4 trillion in overall economic activity, which flows through our nation's ports and waterways. The fifth program is our Maritime Security Operations Mission Program, which encompasses activities to detect, deter, prevent, and disrupt terrorist attacks and other criminal acts in U.S. maritime domain. And finally, the sixth program, which is our Defense Operations Mission Program. Again, we are the sixth military branch. This exercises the Coast Guard's unique authorities and capabilities to support our national defense strategy. Every day, the Coast Guard is deployed around the globe in support of combatant commanders to protect the security of our nation, both here on U.S. soil and far away. Some other responsibilities include providing products and services for our intelligence community, conducting activities and efforts to advance our U.S. diplomacy and international relations, cybersecurity, bridge administration, Great Lakes pilotage, and other waterways management functions, which are supplementary to our aids to navigation. Next slide. So what is it? What do we buy and how do we buy it? So we just went over what the Coast Guard's mission was and what our capabilities are. And that's where we talk about, that saving lives, interdicting smugglers and illegal migrants, all of those things. But during the last few decades, the Coast Guard's readiness has been challenged by its reliance on outdated assets and our shore infrastructure. So the cost of sustaining our assets in order to meet all of those mission responsibilities continues to rise, while the reliability on these outdated assets declines. So the Coast Guard is, we have to replace these assets with state of the market assets and, continue to deliver high quality service to the American people. So in order to do this, we're continuously seeking opportunities to promote and develop strategies for increasing our industrial base for our contracting program, while adhering to all of our small business regulations and ensuring diversity, equity, and inclusion in the procurement process. So to ensure we do more to support small business participation, we're constantly encouraging new entrants, such as through webinars like we're doing today, to the federal contracting sector. And we're trying to initiate market research early and engage industry through one-on-one vendor meetings, requests for information, hosting industry days, and things such as innovation roundtables. So these are a lot of the things that we're doing in order to increase our industrial base. And that is to go over and look at, so increasing the industrial base is one thing, but what is it that we buy, right? So let's go to the next slide. We're going to show you just the dynamic of the next slide. And this is just a snippet of information and things that we purchase. Micheline will go over each of the unique buying activities and some of their more frequently purchased items. But this snapshot here gives you an idea of how diverse our contracting enterprise in Coast Guard is. And being able to support all of these needs, as well as do that within the budgeted priorities, right? So currently, our Coast Guard budget priorities are twofold. That is, the first is to generate sustained readiness, resiliency, and capability. And to do that, the Coast Guard is transforming our total workforce. We continue to sharpen our competitive edge and advance our mission excellence. Through events such as this, through looking at, what are the capabilities available in the market today. The second part of that budget priority is to build the Coast Guard of the future. So again, the Coast Guard is in the midst of the largest recapitalization effort since World War II. So that's not just our facilities, those are our cutters, those are our aircraft. So this is the largest since World War II. This effort is critical for us to be able to have the modern assets that our workforce needs to meet these unprecedented growths and demand of the services that we are mandated to support. And the more that we deploy larger and more capable assets, the resiliency of the recapitalization projects, these things, it comes in, and as we're deploying these new assets, we have to make sure that our piers and waterside support facilities that are vital to this mission success are also recapitalized. So we have a lot going on across the Coast Guard. Our FY24, so this fiscal year's budget, requested $10.22 billion for operations and support. That's just to support operating the Coast Guard, and another $1.55 billion for that recapitalization effort. So we, again, have a lot going on, and you can find the Coast Guard budget is we'll have that link in the provided information after this event. But these are things I think is important that as our industry partners, you understand where the Coast Guard is going, so you can see how you fit in to helping us providing those products and services that we need.
I want to interrupt one moment. As far as the process, when you say, okay, these are the items that we are buying, that process is because a lot of times, as far as the sources sought, is it responding to those? Is that one of the primary or secondary? As far as how do I, as a business owner, get to do that business with you? What does that process look like?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I can't remember if we have that specifically addressed near the end of the slide, but that's all part of that market research, right? So you, as an industry partner, we do often post RFIs, requests for information, sources sought, reaching out, being able to connect with us through looking at our acquisition and planning forecast system, which again, Micheline will go over all of this very shortly. So it's all part of the process. There is no one thing does it all. RFIs and responses to sources sought are part of the tools in our toolbox that helps us gauge industry's interest and capability of providing that service. So I believe, to answer the question is, it's all part of that process. And we'll go over that a bit more once we go through our individual buying activities. We'll talk a little bit more about those things. And this slide, this is one of the ones I like to share with our industry partners. If you're familiar with and looking at, if you've heard of the Federal Procurement Data System or USA Spending, this is GSA's, it's a public category management dashboard. So if you're familiar with FPDS, right? Federal Procurement Data System. That's kind of like the raw data, if you will, of what contract actions we've awarded. Then USA Spending is the more user-friendly version of that data. Whereas then the next level up is this dashboard from GSA called Data to Decisions. And this is the category management dashboard. And this is a great way for you to drill down. And again, public dashboards. The QR code and link are here, and we'll also provide this afterwards. It's a series of dashboards and tools that help you, our industry partners, fully understand like where's the Coast Guard been buying stuff. So it looks at the NAICS and our industry sectors, but you can also drill down and you can see it on the far right tab of this bottom right of this slide, the PSC finder, the product service code finder. You can actually drill down to the actual product service code and see, okay, this is what I'm able to provide. Is the Coast Guard buying this? So it's a great dashboard, and I love sharing it. And I think it's just a great way for you to, as our industry partners, to do market research on your side to say, okay, is this something that the Coast Guard has been purchasing of what I can provide? And to talk about some of those purchases and a lot of, where it fits into the Coast Guard spectrum, would like to turn it over to my colleague, Ms. Micheline Rangel. She's going to tell you about our 6 buying activities and how the Coast Guard is split up. So over to you, Micheline.
Thanks, Nettie. Can you go to the next slide, please? So, as you can see, the Coast Guard is investing in more than $2 billion annually in major and non-major acquisition programs. They purchase and modernize our service ships, our boats, our aircrafts, and our C5 ISR systems. This process of our recapitalizing older and difficult to maintain assets is essential in order to carry out the Coast Guard mission. It helps to ensure our nation's maritime security. And fiscal year 3, almost 50% of that went to small businesses as our prime contract. So that's really, really good. And remains that the Coast Guard, along with our industry partners, achieved an overall 44% of subcontract awards to small business. So on the next slide, shows some of the preliminary for 23 years and goals and our achievements. Next slide, please. So the SBA, our small SBA is responsible for ensuring the government-wide goals for participating in our small businesses are established annually at the statutory levels, and that the reporting agencies' achievements are relative to those goals. Federal government agencies negotiate with the SBA to establish mandatory small business goals. Us at the Coast Guard, we're so committed to ensuring that small businesses have maximum opportunities to compete for contracts. We make sure that we are going above and beyond to utilize our small businesses whenever possible. So guys, when you're out there and you see RFIs and RFQs, make sure you're responding to those, because that will be a way for our KOs to know that you guys are out there. In this slide, you see that our FY23, we went above and beyond meeting our goals for small businesses. We just received our FY24, and so there are slightly higher goals. And I know for sure our KOs are going to do everything they can to make sure we're utilizing small businesses before we go to any other options. Next slide, please. So as Nettie said earlier, we purchase everything. Like we are the largest component of DHS, and we're also very unique that we actually hold a .mil email, and that way we just purchase everything. And because we're so large, we are actually broken down into 6 contracting offices. the United States Coast Guard manages a multi-billion recapitalization investment portfolio of acquisitions across major product lines, including our surface, our aviation, and our C5ISR programs. With such a large and diverse mission to support, the acquisition program has implemented our 6 chief of contracting offices. We call them COCOs. These COCOs exist to support the major operational programs special to our component. Our next few slides, we're going to give a quick overview of those contracting offices, their locations, and the items and offices and the things that they procure. I would like to make sure to recommend to you guys that once you have identified the contracting office that best fits your business capabilities, you can use those acronyms that you'll see on each page to put into your search criteria in APFS and SAM.gov. That will help you search for, minimize your search criteria. So you're not looking through things that you guys will not be, specialized in. Next slide, please. So our first COCO is our Office of Contract Operations, CG912. CG912 supports the acquisition requirements for Coast Guard headquarters and the acquisitions of C5IT aircraft and marine vessels major systems. CG912 is also responsible for the procurement of major and non-major requirements in support of headquarters mission partners. This office also supports our academy, our research and development center, our special mission training centers like our A schools and our C schools, and the uniform distribution center. Some of the items that they procure are vessels associated with equipment supplies, major electronics, emphases on oceanography and other marine science electronics, also pollution control and abatement, professional consulting, technical engineering training services, and our medical services. CG912 operates from basically 2 locations, here in Washington, D.C. at headquarters, and we also have a division down in Chesapeake. A keynote for CG912 is they buy the assets, but once delivered, example, our cutters or their airframe platforms, then maintenance and procurement of ongoing platform requirements are purchased through either ALC or SFLC, and we'll go over those COCOs in a minute. Next slide, please. Our next COCO is our Aviation Logistics Center, which we call ALC. ALC's mission is to provide aviation logistics that enable our Coast Guard mission, the execution of everything, including our depot level maintenance, engineering, supply, procurements, and information services. The Aviation Logistics Center supports the acquisition requirements for engineering, supply of our aviation fleet and other assigned assets to support Coast Guard missions. At ALC in Elizabeth City, we support all that the main primary inventory for the Coast Guard aviation, and it's about $1.7 billion. The rest of our support is located in the 25 air stations. So the mission is to keep them flying and providing the right stuff, the right time, every time. ALC also has 204 aircrafts that provide services for 2 fixed wings or 3 fixed wing platforms, 2 rudder wings, platforms, and so on. On the average day at ALC, the ALC team ships and receipts for over 700 aircraft parts. They respond to over 100 technical engineering questions. They perform depot maintenance on our aircraft and has 2 expert field teams repairing aircraft and air stations each day. They also have each day the ALC repairs over 500 component parts and manufactures 100 piece parts that support PDM and warehouse supported requirements. Some of the procurements that they have is like aircraft parts or ground service equipment, engines, engine accessories, maintenance and repair, and so on. Next slide, please. Our next COCO is our C5I Service Center, which is also called CG914. So just to backtrack really quick, when you're putting in that APFS search criteria, if anything is in IT, as you can see on the bottom of the slide, you would put in USCG/CG-914, and that will just help minimize to everything that has to do with any IT. Okay, so C5I contract operations, or CG914, supports the acquisition requirements for the C5I Service Center. Its efforts is to sustain, maintain, and acquire new hardware, software, and IT services. C5I's vision for the future is to empower our Coast Guard community with reliable, mobile, and integrated technology. They support primarily everything associated with the IT infrastructure for the Coast Guard network, our CG1, and the secure networks. And that includes all the endpoint devices that we use every single day. This also covers all our satellite communications for ships and planes. The main focuses and areas of capabilities are the Coast Guard C5I infrastructure, making sure we're cyber ready, optimizing software, mobility, and the cloud. But we also access data for complex decisions in the workplace, and making sure all our cutters are connected. The C5I Service Center is actually kind of unique because it's broken down into 3 buying divisions. So Division 1 is located in Alexandria, and that one is on the CG9141. This division develops, deploys, and supports the information technology infrastructure of the United States Coast Guard. It's a highly sensitive but unclassified, and also have the secret networks as well. Our second division is located in Kearneysville, which is our CG9142. This division develops, fields, maintains, operates, and provides user support for Coast Guard enterprise information systems that improve Coast Guard mission performance through the innovative application of our technology. Division 3, which is located in Portsmouth, Virginia, is under CG-9143. This division delivers, manages, and supports mission-enabling command, control, communication, surveillance, and navigation capabilities. Next slide. So we'd love to share this great C5I vendor management office. These guys are amazing. It's a fairly new development of this office, and they are a slew of information, and they have been really just hitting the ground running with meeting with different vendors, putting in a repository for all of the capability statements. Their contact information is on there on the bottom. Their function is to oversee, develop, and manage of capabilities for strategic partnerships, communications, performance measurements, compliance, risk management, and onboarding, offboarding vendors and the workforce labor. So if you guys are in that IT realm, I would definitely try to reach out to these guys and see if you guys can make an appointment to meet with them.
Okay,
Next slide.
Interrupt you right there for one moment, because that's one of the
absolutely.
questions that we actually had from the audience was how to be on the vendor list.
Right. So the vendor list is really, there's not like a vendor list, like per se, like where we would send you guys things all the time. But what we have is called the category management repository. And so every time any of our small business specialists meet with vendors, we will put in notes and put into a repository the capability statement for our KOs to go and do their market research inside of those repositories.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and I'll tag in just there for a second. So part of the president's management agenda and all of the memorandums that have come out since 2022 of equity and diversity within our industrial base, with increasing entrance and re-entrance to the federal marketplace. It's more frowned upon to have internal lists because our goal is to maximize new entrants and re-entrants. So there are a lot of tools that have been launched recently across the board, but for the most part, this is where we really want our buying activities to rely on that, individually developed market research and make sure that we are bringing on new entrants, re-entrants, and that we're procuring from those vendors and suppliers that may have never had an opportunity to do this before. So it is something that we're not encouraging to have individual vendor lists. But as Micheline mentioned with our C5I Service Center, they're very specific. And so they have that email address that you can reach out to. And they talk about if you're in the IT industry, they will be able to connect with you. And bi-weekly, I believe it is, they do one-on-ones. And that's getting in front of the program office. So again, this is a new office for the Coast Guard. And they're one of those, if you're in the IT sector, to reach out to that group. And they'll be able to connect with you on a more program specific information versus an individual Coast Guard vendor list.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Betty. So our next COCO is our Surface Force Logistics Center, which is SFLC. SFLC provides depot level maintenance, engineering, supply, logistics, and information services for all the Coast Guard surface forces that include over 200 cutters and over 1,800 small boats. SFLC's Coast Guard mission is ready today and preparing for tomorrow. The United States Coast Guard is a military multi-mission maritime service within the Department of Homeland Security and one of the nation's six armed services. Its core roles are to protect the public, the environment, and the U.S. economic and security interests in any maritime region in which those interests may be at risk, including any international waters and America's coast, ports, and our inland waterways. SFLC provides a comprehensive, effective, and efficient contracting support to the various branches of the product lines and shared service divisions. To this, they manage the procurement of supplies, our program depot maintenance, engineering services, and our other services. Their main area of support includes our dry dock and dockside repairs to our vessels when they're at port, painting, and our janitorial and our facility maintenance services at our Coast Guard yards. Also, any overhaul, repair, and purchase of turbines, medium and high-speed diesel engines. They also have engineering support services, technology support services, financial management, and audit support services.
Okay, you know what? I don't mean to interrupt you, but I got another question for you here when we start talking about parts and things. Well, does the USCG utilize the DLA DIBs to acquire products?
All right. Daddy,
I went ahead and answered that question in the chat. Is that the Coast Guard, so the primary office that utilizes DLA contract vehicles would be our Aviation Logistics Center. And a lot of that is because our Aviation Logistics Center, we have cast-offs, if you will, of naval equipment, especially when it comes to aviation. So we sometimes do utilize available DLA contract vehicles and BPAs, but we do not post requirements to DIBs. That's DLA specific. And if DLA was posting it, ours would be posted on sam.gov. Or if we were going directly to a DLA vendor, it would just go, depending on the contract vehicle, it may just be to those DLA vendors based on the ordering procedures, but we do not post to DIBs.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. So our next contracting office is our LawCom. It's actually formerly known as DAL 9. So when you're putting in the search criteria, you could put either DAL 9 or LawCom on there. And I know some of the older ones will still have DAL 9, and then others will have LawCom. The Office of Procurement and Contracting Operation Logistics Command. This is when it's great to have acronyms. LawCom is formerly known as the DAL 9's area of responsibility, and it includes our two formal contracting offices. One is in Norfolk, and the other one is in Alameda, California. They have oversight of over more than 24 simplified acquisition offices across the bases and our training centers. The primary area of responsibility is awarding, administrating contracts and orders for the operational logistics functions of our bases. So it's anything from facilities, operational payment to support the facilities on the Coast Guard bases and our training centers. They also support all of our fleet and food services. Some of the list of items procured are our base operation maintenance services for East and West Coast. This includes our food services, utilities, grounds and housing maintenance services, oil pollution, and emergency responses. Next slide, please. Our final COCO is our Shore Infrastructure Logistics Center, which is SILCON. SILCON exercises technical authority and applies configuration standards to develop and enforce our tactics, techniques, and procedures to acquire, maintain, alter, refurbish, and dispose of shore facilities to enable our Coast Guard missions execution and operations in support of public safety and homeland security. These things include providing the acquisitions of program depot maintenance, major repairs, and any modifications of our Coast Guard shore facilities, and fixing in the aids to navigation. It also includes technical and logistical support in addition to managing shore facility related programs, such as our real property and our environmental compliance. SILCON supports acquisitions for the complete life cycle of our facilities, ranging from property acquisitions, our designs, constructions, the depot level maintenance and repair, and also demolition. Items procured under SILCON are our major construction projects, which would include our piers, our wharfs, our enlisted housing, our warehouses, schools, any schools, building alterations, and architecture and engineering services. So that's all for our COCOs and our contracting offices. And again, if you have any further questions on where you guys might fit in, you can also send us an email with helping you to identify. I'm going to turn it over now to Debbie. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Micheline. So hopefully the answers that many of you are like, okay, that's great. This is what the Coast Guard buys, but okay, how are you buying it? And then how can we get into providing these goods and services for the Coast Guard? So across the board, Coast Guard, we recognize the importance of collaboration during our acquisition planning, and we take full advantage of management tools. We talked about the DLA contract vehicles just a few minutes ago, but we take advantage of the tools and various strategies and resources available to us to meet our overall mission requirements. Our strategies and resources that we use to procure goods and services, many of them listed here, of course, are mandatory sources. We have to go to our mandatory sources. We also utilize a lot of strategic sourcing. So DHS, part of strategic sourcing is under category management, which will across the federal sector, you'll be hearing a lot of things about category management more and more, but that's that buying smarter for those common goods and services that everyone buys. So examples of this would include office supplies, travel, lodging, housekeeping services, and more. So for us in the government, it means buying like an enterprise. So how do we do that? So one of those methods is through strategic sourcing there on the left. So DHS has more than 70 active strategic sourcing vehicles that cover a wide range of commodities and services. Those specific vehicles are available at any given time. They vary. Award dates vary. We also adopt, if you've heard of best in class contracts, example, this would be Oasis, NASA SOUP, if you've heard of those. Those are best in class contracts that we've adopted at DHS. Many of the contract strategic sourcing vehicles, DHS, in order to support this initiative, so just like small business, we have category management goals, is DHS has mandated the use of certain strategic sourcing vehicles in order to maximize category management efficiencies, those greater savings at lower prices, whether it's sources that we can meet or not. So we utilize, again, heavily a lot of our strategic sourcing vehicles. We also, in order to achieve those small disadvantage goals, briefly spoke about the president's management agenda and how we can increase entrance, re-entrance, and also meet those small disadvantage business goals for that equity and procurement and increase to our disadvantaged business communities is through the 8A program. So the Coast Guard heavily utilizes both competitive and sole source or non-competitive 8A business development program. We also do is mission, like talked about earlier with our small business goals. Again, we're very proud of being able to exceed those goals that have been pushed out to us. Is we do a ton of small business set-asides. We're also starting to increase our ability and through our market research, right? Again, that response to RFIs and source asides, doing partial and reserve small business set-asides. We do this both on the open market and by using our strategic sourcing orders. So we can do that if the contract vehicle allows, we're able to maximize that. Depending on what the requirement is, we also do that unrestricted open market. And then we do, other than full and open competition, and that's more in our aviation and our surface fleet. We have, because of sole source, like our OEMs or limited sources who can provide certain things, where sometimes we do have that other than full and open competition. So we, again, are able to procure things through a variety of different contract vehicles. And if we can go to the next slide, we like to share this one because it's kind of that visual, that roadmap. So if you're driving down the road, what is it, what is our our, I don't want to say order, but this gives you a general idea of, again, that category management. Like if it's a vehicle item that we can procure under one of our already sourced strategic sourcing vehicles, and our market research supports going back to it, we do often utilize those. GSA schedules. We also have our science and technology and our small business innovation and research program. And then the Coast Guard under DHS, we do have some limited other transaction authorities. And the last but never least is, if none of the things that your firm is able to provide us is out on current contract vehicle, if we haven't posted this need somewhere else, there's always that unsolicited proposal opportunity. So again, these are, it's that nice little visual to kind of, add on, in addition to the previous slide, how we buy, like we also have some other available innovations and programs of being able to fulfill our needs.
Okay, well,
And
while we're...
that's...
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you, since we're talking about as far as the off-ramping, as far as the variety of contracting lanes. Question one, what are the USCG's preferred and or mandated big vehicles? I take it this is what we're looking at currently on our screen.
Right, if you're looking at the bottom left. So DHS has, and it will be in the handout with the small business, with the helpful websites. So DHS has a public site for what the adopted category management and strategic sourcing vehicles are. And so you're able to go, as our industry partners go and see what those contract vehicles are through. You can do a simple Google search of DHS strategic sourcing, and it gets you right to that link, and you can see what those contract vehicles are.
Okay, now this is a two-part question I also want to ask, and I don't want to take us off course as far as with our time allowed today, but how has the delay in this year's budget approval impacted the USCG procurement plans for this year? I'm just talking about for this year, and are you seeing a lot more direct awards?
I'll answer the first part is the budget, of course, it always impacts us because no matter how much we plan, we can't actually award until we have a budget. So everything gets shifted to the right. And then are we seeing a lot more directed awards? I wouldn't say any more than normal. What we're seeing is because of the budget shifting to the right, that pushes our procurement acquisition lead times. So we're having to rely heavily upon established contract vehicles through category management. One of the things I always recommend is if, again, do that Google search and get that DHS strategic sourcing, and it will get you to those adopted contract vehicles, is if you go within those 10 categories that it lists out, the common goods and services, within what your firm is able to provide as a product or service, look at those strategic sourcing vehicle prime contract holders, because again, that's public information. And if it doesn't link you over to the website showing who the current contract holders are, there will be a fact sheet that it will connect you to from that link. And I always encourage our industry partners is, get your foot in the door by looking at subcontracting. So look at who those primes are and make a connection with those primes and start getting your foot in the door through subcontracting opportunities under those contract vehicles, because that will allow you to get that experience and past performance that will help promote you into the next stage and the next stage, and hopefully be a prime contract holder in the future. Okay. So great questions. Thank you.
And I think another, from an emphasis with that shifting of the budget to the right, and of course that's shortening your windows, it's really important to put some emphasis on the RFIs and the sources sought to respond. So, again, it's responding to those in order to, again, getting that foot in the door or getting an introduction into, those opportunities. So we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, but I just wanted to, bring it back to, again, how do we do business with the United States Coast Guard? And again, I think that this year, especially just for this year, with that budget shifting right, it is also much more important to respond to the RFIs and the sources sought.
Absolutely. And if you're not able to provide the entire service, again, we have subcontracting. There's legislation happening right now with encouraging, right now DHS's policy is subcontracting evaluation factor in contract awards. Again, this would be unrestricted, is encouraged, but there's legislative policy on the board now that's going to change that to where it's going to be more than just encouraged. So even with those RFIs and sources sought, if you're not able to perform the full spectrum of the requirement, please respond, because that also helps us understand if subcontracting opportunities are available, and we can help increase goals at procurement specific levels. So that's another area that we're focusing on. So that's another great point. Thank you so much. And I'll briefly go over, just a couple things. Again, we always like to highlight, and then we'll get into some more, is our research and development, test and evaluation and innovation program. So if we want to go on to the next slide. So our innovation program, we have a lot on the table. I don't know if this slide, next slide, please. So the Coast Guard has a lot on the table, but we also have, again, our major program areas. You can see here on the left. And then we have over on the right, and we have the QR code that takes you to the research priorities that provides further detail. But if your firm has something that is in the realm of research and development and meets one of these program areas and our research priorities that you can link to here, the best thing that we can tell you is email our RDT&E program at the email provided on this slide, research@uscg.mil. To email them gets you in front of the program offices and the decision makers of the Coast Guard of the future faster than if an APFS record is posted. These are the decision makers who are looking at where the Coast Guard is going. So if you're able to provide and meet some of those research priority initiatives, we encourage you to connect with the RDT&E program office at that email. They're very responsive. Usually within 24 hours, they're having already scheduled a meeting to speak with you about your capabilities. But this gets you in front of the decision makers before acquisition has a requirement on their plate to post to SAM.gov. So we encourage you to link with them as early as possible. And if we go to the next slide, this highlights what the Coast Guard machine learning and our AI, what our research and strategy is. Again, that RDT&E Center, take a look at what the priorities are for the Coast Guard, which you can see here. But we have a need to meet these strategic plans, but we need to also understand what the market capabilities are. So by you reaching out early to that RDT&E Center, that helps the Coast Guard make those formed decisions of where we're going to be in the future. And the last area I wanted to show about our innovation, and when it comes to technology, another great one. So the RDT&E Center has everything that encompasses shore, fleet, whatever it may be. But our Blue Tech Center of Expertise specifically addresses, and Blue technology, as defined by Congress, is any technology, system, or platform that is designed for use or application above, on, or below the sea surface. So our Center for Blue Tech specifically addresses those things that are, again, below, on or below the sea surface. Another great office. So if you're able to provide or have an idea or an innovative technique, please reach out to our Blue Tech Center of Expertise. Again, like the RDT&E Center, they're very responsive. And these are the decision makers of the Coast Guard of the future and where the Coast Guard is going, not at we have an actual requirement in hand. So I really like to encourage our industry partners to look at what the objectives of each of those centers are, and reach out if you feel like you have something that you can provide to support that mission. All right, so let's talk about, and we can just go ahead and slide on to the next slide. Just like we do market research, right? We've just hit this up again and highlight it, you as our industry partners have to do that market research to be like, okay, is this something that the Coast Guard has a need for? And, have we been purchasing, whatever it may be? So we highly encourage, look at that Coast Guard strategic plan. You're going to see what the decision makers have already said, this is where the Coast Guard is going, and be able to formulate the idea whether or not your firm can meet what our needs are. The APFS, that Acquisition Planning and Forecasting System. Subscribe, right? Please subscribe. This is where we have to post what our upcoming requirements are. Again, it is a forecasting system, not an acquisition strategy system. So it's a very dynamic system. We may update, but this is how we are able to be transparent with industry and what we utilize to say, okay, this is our forecast. If it gets posted, just be aware that it may change. Again, because it's forecast, and we do this through our market research. So we let you know what's out there and available, and then you're able to come back and say, hey, I'm interested. And this is where those changes occur in that forecasting system, because you as our industry partners let us know that you are interested and capable. And so that helps us shape through our market research where and how we are going to solicit for our requirement. Again, the other dashboard that I brought up is that GSA data to decisions. Check it out. This is history. So if you want to see where the Coast Guard is going, look at that strategic plan. You want to see where we're at right now? That's that forecast list. You want to see what we've done to say, okay, well, how much of this has the Coast Guard purchased in the past? That would be that data to decisions to help us shape our requirements and solicit to you as our industry partners and bring on new entrants and re-entrants. Again, watch that SAM.gov, watch that eBuy. If you see a request for information or sources sought or industry days, right? Subscribe, respond, participate. We cannot stress enough. We don't know what's available if we don't have that active industry engagement. So again, please let us know. And even if you're looking at subcontracting opportunities, those are things that we can help in setting up our evaluation criteria and setting up our solicitations. Even if it's going unrestricted, we can help promote additional small business through our subcontracting opportunities. And last one I always like to talk about here is watch the latest acquisition news. See what the Coast Guard is doing in the news. And, are we purchasing this, purchasing that? Just keep an eye on what's going on to help you better understand where we're going with our needs. Next slide. I think we'll just go ahead and briefly touch on this. I know we're very close, or are we doing okay with time? I should ask that question.
We're right there. So what we will do is any Q&A questions that we also have, we will reach out to them directly.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
And the last couple slides here are just resources. Again, in addition to a whole bunch of these links, the last couple slides are just resources and helpful little tidbits. And in the very last slide, we do have our Coast Guard industry engagement team email. And then we also have our vendor and supplier registration. That's just to get newsletter information. If you scroll to the very last slide, we talked about we don't have a vendor database. This is just for us to send you information and have a one-stop shop with your contact information to give you updates of webinars such as we're doing today. So that's what that vendor and supplier registration is.
Okay, so putting another emphasis on everyone will be receiving this slide deck, so you can, rest assured you will receive it normally within 24 hours. And as far as the questions that we did not get to answer within the Q&A, we will get those answers out to you shortly. Outside of that, I want to, come back on here and say thank you so much to Nettie and Micheline for doing our webinar today as far as how to do business with the United States Coast Guard. And also ask that if you have any other questions or needs, please reach out to us here at BidExecs and Proposal Helper. We can also provide you with, again, some of this information as far as, especially when we start talking about sources sought, can assist you in that area to get those, which is very important, to get that communications going. And, outside of that, I'm gonna let them get back to the industry day that they're at. And greatly appreciate all that you all do. And thank you all for joining us today for doing business with the United States Coast Guard. Thank you.